really had to take all comers. The unfortunate thing about 40 under 40 is that it does not prevent you from eventually being older than 40. So just so you're forewarned. Also, they didn't charge us money to say words way back then. I'm sorry about that piece of it. My name's Rob Klein. I am the director of communications, or the communications director, I guess is what we decided, for what we now call at Hancher the Office of Performing Arts and Engagement. I know that many of you are familiar with Hancher. This community means a lot to all of us who are long timers at Hancher. We obviously owe a great debt to the Stanley family. We love to bring our programming here. And so I know that many of you are probably familiar with Hancher in sort of a historical way. And you may also be aware that as we enter our 51st season, there are some changes underway. So let me start with this. How many of you were ever in the building I call Hancher Classic, the original Hancher Auditorium? Okay. And how many of you have been in the new Hancher Auditorium? Okay. Those of you who did not raise your hand, I really need this job. So if you could look in the brochures I've left on your table and pick a show or two, we'd be delighted to have you. And I'm going to try to convince you that that's something you might want to do. But before I do that, let me give you a little bit of background on my relationship to Hancher. I grew up in Cedar Rapids and saw my very first Shakespeare play at Hancher. Used to go to the band extravaganza all of the time. My parents took me to things that I really loved, like the Canadian Brass, and things that I thought were really suspect, like the musical Cats. And so it was an important part of my early experiences with the arts. Fast forward, I go to the University of Iowa, and I'm in the Hawkeye marching band, as all the cool kids are. And I have just marched in the January 1st, 1991 Rose Bowl. If you remember that game, the band was great, the team was not. And we'd flown home and we had learned a number of things. We'd learned that Dr. Jones, our beloved director, was stepping down. I had a marching band injury. I assure you that's really a thing. I'd been hit by the baton twirler, and well, at any rate, I was going to retire from the marching band because it wasn't going to get any better than the Rose Bowl, right? If you remember the Hawkeye football team around 1990, it wasn't the team you know now. Going to the Rose Bowl was a big flipping deal, and I figured, well, it's never going to get any better than that. So I retired, and I thought, well, I need something to do with my time. And way back then, they would put the Daily Iowan outside our dorm room doors every day. And so I opened it up, and there's an ad to be an usher at Hancher Auditorium. I thought, I don't know if I can get that job, but I like that Hancher place. And so I went and I interviewed, and I told the same story I just told you, the first Shakespeare play, all of that. And Connie Tipsworth, who just retired, gave me a job. And I loved everything we did at Hancher. I loved the jazz and the classical music and the Broadway and the experimental stuff. The only thing I didn't love was the dance. I did not understand the dance at all. The men in the tights, it was very confusing. But there was a young woman on the staff with me who looked really good in the blue blazer we used to wear, and she was out of my league. So far out of my league, we weren't playing the same damn sport. And she was majoring in dance. So I made it my business to learn everything I could about dance. And Hancher is a good place to do that, especially in the early 1990s, where there's no Dancing with the B-level stars, or So You Think You Can Dance, or YouTube. To learn about dance, you have to actually go to dance events. And so I did all of that in an effort to impress this girl. And what I always say now is that paid double dividends. Now, right after jazz, dance is my favorite thing we do at Hancher. And I just celebrated my 29th anniversary with the girl. Now, we don't promise that to all of our student employees, but it happens with a fair amount of frequency. And so fast forward, I go out in the world, I taught school for a little while, I wrote about dirt track racing for a little while. Probably some dirt track racing fans in the crowd, I would guess. And then one day, my friend Joel called me up and he said, Rob, I know you're looking for a new gig because you accomplished all your goals as an award-winning dirt track racing journalist. You should apply for my job at Hampshire. And I said, yes, Joel, because what a world-class performing arts center really needs is an award-winning dirt track racing journalist to handle its marketing. But it turns out you can tell that story about meeting your wife on the Hampshire staff and turn it into a full-time job. I don't know if you can still do it, but you could do it then. And so I've been with Hampshire now. November will make 22 years. That means I've worked in Hampshire Classic. I've spent 8 years on the road after the flood, and now have been part of the building and reopening of the new Hampshire facility. Sat around at home with everyone during the pandemic, and now we're back for, as the screen says, our 51st season, which feels a little bit like season number 1 for us, because we have just gone through a leadership transition. I bet a bunch of you know our friend Chuck Swanson, right? He's no doubt spoken at this very meeting, right? And he was at Hampshire, all told, I think 34 years, right? So my 22 years makes me a new timer at the place. He was there for 34 years, has a wonderful story about how he snuck into the construction site when they were building Hampshire Classic. So he has a deep connection to the place. He announced his retirement just ahead of our 50th anniversary season, and he surprised us. We didn't know that was coming. And so suddenly we're sort of in the midst of this pandemic, and we're without our executive director, or we will be soon, and we're trying to do our 50th anniversary season, and everything seems extremely stressful. And then we hired Andre Perry. Now, how many of you know Andre Perry? I'm not surprised it's the people who have been 40 under 40 who know Andre Perry. Andre Perry for many years ran the England Civic Theater in downtown Iowa City. He's a brilliant writer, a graduate of the nonfiction writing program, and a major thinker in the performing arts field. So we were very fortunate that he did not leave town for greener pastures long ago, that he wanted to stay and raise his family in Iowa City. And so he has become the executive director of Hampshire Auditorium, as well as the executive director of this new Office for Performing Arts and Engagement. And what that means is that we are in the process of reintegrating the arts on the UI campus so that Hampshire and the Department of Dance and the Department of Theater Arts and the School of Music and the Performing Arts Production Unit are now working together, sort of doing business as performing arts in Iowa. And as part of that, we've also been making some changes to the way we think about how we're presenting the arts as what we would call ourselves a major university presenter. So let me take you through a little bit of what we have going on. Let's see if I'm smart enough to use the clicker. Look at that. So when you do 51st season, one of the things that you're trying to do is you're trying to balance honoring your longtime traditions, the things that make Hampshire Hampshire, while also pushing forward and trying to see what's next in the arts, right? Hampshire has a long tradition of introducing new artists and experimental artists and avant-garde artists and up-and-coming artists to the community. And it can be really easy to like fall in love with, say, the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, and then present them and present them and present them, which we will continue to do because they are one of the greatest dance companies in the world. But there's also somewhere out there in the world the next Alvin Ailey, and we are redoubling our efforts to think about our programming in terms of how can we continue our tradition of introducing new and exciting artists while also honoring artists that we have loved for a long time. Kayla's making me nervous back there with that camera. We think about our constituents in 3 ways. Those are, I'm happy to say that those are dance students. That's not the English department. We think of our constituents as UI students, right? as the wider community, this is one of our outdoor concerts. So I don't forget to do it later. This Friday night, this coming Friday night, August 25th, we're doing a big outdoor concert on our front lawn that we call the Hampshire Green. Iowa City native Elizabeth Moen opens the show. Brittany Howard, who you may know as the lead singer of the Alabama Shakes. And if you don't know the Alabama Shakes, they are worth your time. And so is Brittany's solo work. And then a New Orleans R&B hip hop artist by the name of Dawn Richard. Free on our lawn. 11 food trucks, Kayla? 11 food trucks. All the water you can drink in case it's hot. Absolutely free. I hope that, well, I'd like all of you. Remember how I said I need the job? I'd like all of you to join us if you would. What time does it start, Kayla? Gathering starts at 5 o'clock. Music starts at 6. And you can enjoy one of the artists or two of the artists or all of the artists. You can come and go. We'll just be delighted to see you. That's why I brought you. I knew there was a reason I brought you along. All right. Also among our constituents, and this one is maybe not quite as obvious, we think of the artists as our constituents. So these are our friends. Well, those are 3 of the 4 members of the Kronos Quartet, perhaps the leading modern music quartet in the world. And that is the poet Nikki Finney sitting with them. They are performing, that's from the Hampshire stage. They're performing a newly commissioned work that they brought to us last season based on one of Nikki's poems. And we think cultivating long-term relationships with artists supports growth in the performing arts, right? That's part of being a university presenter. You want to, what amounts to research for Hampshire Auditorium is finding ways to support artists who are trying to do new things. And the Kronos Quartet, which has also recently celebrated 50 years, but for many years, they were at the very far forefront of contemporary classical music. And at one time, Hampshire had commissioned fully 10% of all the music they played as a commitment to helping them push the industry forward. All right, so what are we up to programmatically? First, we're part of the Writing University, right? And so we are committed to storytelling across the arts. That's one reason why we like programming with poets. But of course, storytelling is a broad concept. Musicians do it, dancers do it, of course, theater artists do it. And so we are constantly thinking about the ways in which we can promote the art of storytelling across disciplines. Okay, so here's another big change we're making. Hampshire Auditorium, the main auditorium seats 1,800, which is actually quite a bit down from Hampshire Classic that originally seated 2,600. And then by the time it closed, due to some remodels and the ADA and some other things, seated, this is the sort of thing a marketing director remembers, Hampshire Classic seated 2,533. And so we went down a whole bunch of seats when we built or the new Hampshire, because we are not that big a market. And so we wanted to build the right sized auditorium. But even with 1,800 seats, that's not right for everything, right? And so we believe in full houses, that full houses make happy houses. And so I don't want to consider disciplines. I'm going to jump through a bunch of this stuff to show you some venues. So there's the 1,800 seat main hall, which we like a lot. This year, you'll see us do chamber music and dance with the seating on stage. So we can get 248 seats for chamber music, 185 seats for dance. These are numbers that marketing directors love. 185, I can do that. So as you look through the brochures at your table, you will see some classical music. You'll see, remember that girl I told you about who was a dance major? She is better at tap dancing than I will ever be at anything in my life. We are presenting a tap dancer this year by the name of Ayadeli Cassell, and we're doing that show in this configuration. And if you have even this much interest in tap dance, you should not miss her. She is one of the most stunning artists, certainly tap artists, but just artists generally. We've seen it a long time. This is Strauss Hall. Some of you may have been in Strauss Hall. This is where we traditionally present what we call club hancher, often jazz musicians or international musicians who can be supported in a cabaret style, or we're going to try it in the round with the Takash Quartet, We've also started doing, I don't know, this isn't my thing, I'm an old guy, but we've started doing these performances, these stand-up only performances for the hip young people who want to hear some rock and roll at Hampshire Auditorium. They don't call it rock and roll. That's how old I am. And then we also have a series of partner venues, including that piano is in the Senate chamber at the old Capitol. It's a beautiful room for various kinds of music. In the middle, that's the Stanley Museum of Art, and their beautiful mural right down inside the lobby. And those two beautiful and nearly unclothed men are from Palobolis, the great dance company Palobolis. They were with us last year. And then this is Andre's old place, the Englert Theater here on the end. We are presenting, as you flip through the brochure, you'll see that we're presenting in all of those places and all of those configurations in an effort to get the right art in the right room with the right sized audience. We are doing 4 Broadway titles this year. You may have seen we launched for the very first time a subscription series. Ignore the dates on Come From Away. This is an old slide. Come From Away had a disagreement with their union, and so the show got moved to June. But those 4 shows are what we're presenting. Aaron Sorkin's take on To Kill a Mockingbird in January, followed by Hairspray and Chicago, and then Come From Away in June. Subscriptions are still on sale. Individual tickets are also on sale, so if you like Hairspray but you don't like Chicago, you can now sort of pick and choose. The reason we have launched a subscription series, make sure I'm not rambling too much, the reason we have launched a subscription series is because it will allow us to work more closely with the Broadway industry. This is their preferred method for working. And so what we hope that will mean is that over time, you'll see us doing newer shows more frequently. We believe in the occasional revival. We presented even I thought it was a gorgeous revival of Les Mis, and I think that show is terrible, right? But it was a gorgeous revival. So it's not that we don't like revivals anymore, but we do want access to newer shows like To Kill a Mockingbird, like Come From Away, like the Tina Turner musical, even Dear Evan Hansen. And we think that this subscription model will allow us to do more of that going forward. Some main stage performances this year, the great Herbie Hancock. That man is 83 years old and still touring. He went to school in Grinnell. It's a little known fact about our man, Herbie Hancock. He is still the coolest jazz musician in the world. And he is, actually, these are slightly out of order. The Americana artist Jason Isbell in the 400 unit plays on September 8th. Herbie Hancock plays on September 9th. And then Rhiannon Giddens, if you don't know Rhiannon Giddens, look her up. She took over the Silk Road project from Yo-Yo Ma, and that's just the beginning of how astonishing she is as a songwriter, as a vocalist, as a string player. She's just brilliant. That's happening on the Wednesday, the 11th? The 13th. That's the other reason I brought Kayla. She can do math. On the 13th of September. And then the great Mavis Staples and a band called the War and Treaty are also on the season in the fall. So Midori, one of the great violinists in the world, and the Lucerne Festival Strings, the a cappella group from England, the King's Singers, who we have not presented in years. And that came home to me when I looked at those guys, and I'm like, huh, the members of the King's Singers used to be older than me. But they're not anymore, but they are a brilliant a cappella group from England, and they are coming to do a wonderful show, Christmas music, Disney music, just a big family show in early December. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Do you memorize the whole book? Yeah, I'm impressed. And then Fierce. Fierce is a brand new contemporary opera that the music was composed by Dr. William Menafield, who is an associate professor of jazz studies at the University of Iowa. So we're very excited to bring faculty work to our stage. It'll be performed by UI students. So it's an example of the way that the performing arts are coming together in this new way at the university. A range of other shows listed there: the jazz singer Samara Joy, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra from England, the Trox. The Trox are one of the finest ballet companies in the world. They are all men and they all dance as women, and they are hysterical. But not only are they hysterical, they dance on point as well as any ballerina you will see anywhere. So I highly recommend our friends in drag from the Trox. We're trying to get a date with the contemporary jazz band Snarky Puppy. They've had some health issues in the band. And then it's the 100th anniversary of the original modern dance company in the United States, the Martha Graham Dance Company. They are performing with UI students. They're sending some folks to teach UI dance students one of Martha's pieces that they will then perform during the show. I know you can all look through this brochure, so I won't tell you about each and every artist. But I do want to mention Caroline Shaw and the Ataka String Quartet. This is another new thing we're doing. We are going to start having sort of a composer in residence program. And this year, that composer is Caroline Shaw, who's right around 30 years old, won the Pulitzer Prize recently. I think the youngest winner of the Pulitzer Prize for music ever. She's coming, Kayla says I got that right. She is coming with the Ataka String Quartet in the fall, a choir called Room Full of Teeth. How's that for a choir name? Room Full of Teeth will be performing some of her work in the late fall. And then So Percussion, the wonderful group So Percussion. Caroline will come back with them and perform again. Throughout the year, she will also work with UI music students and interact with the community. So again, the first of a new program, a composer in residency program. We're really excited about Caroline. Another thing about her, and the Ataka will be performing some of this music. She has a piece where part of it is inspired by the writing of Marilyn Robinson, the great emeritus professor from the Writers' Workshop at the university. There are our friends, Room Full of Teeth. There's Ayodele Cassell, the tap dancer I was telling you about. As part of our dance programming, we're also doing a piece with Reggie Wilson Fist and Heel Performance Group that is grounded in issues of social justice and Black history and brilliant dancing. So we're excited about that. We are the home of the UI Dance Gala. So if you want to see our wonderful dance majors, like the one I married, you can see them during Dance Gala at the universities at Hampshire. These are some of the things that are happening in the smaller rooms, including the jazz tubaist Theon Cross, the Elias String Quartet, a new work that we've commissioned by an artist who calls himself Serpent with Feet that is happening at the Englert, and then the world music singer Amu Sengari. I'm going to get it. Amu Sengari. Andre's a festival guy. He's the guy who brings you Mission Creek Festival every year and the Witching Hour Festival every year. And so he came to Hampshire and immediately launched a new festival. It's called Infinite Dream. It is all about the American dream and different ways of thinking about it and a different angles you might take to think about what it means to be an American and what America means and what our potential for greatness continues to be. How we've been great, how we've been less than great, how we might be great as we go forward. There's Caroline Shaw. We've talked about all those people. This is how Andre thinks of what we're up to, right? We're trying to do a set of experiences, the broadly popular, the iconic, or the legendary, like Herbie Hancock, the virtuosic, like someone like Ayodele Cassell, someone like Midori, the exploratory, like Serpent with Feet, and then the alchemic, which is not a word the marketing director necessarily would have put on the slide, but the alchemic, that moment where you're seeing a show and for whatever reason, it connects with you and it changes the way you think about the world, right? We believe we offer those opportunities over and over and over. You may not have it every time. You may not like every show, but you will always see something that gives you the opportunity to think about things in new and different ways. All right, I've rambled on. I apparently have left like a minute for questions. I was so clear that no one has any questions at all. When will I know what? We were supposed to know a couple weeks ago. So I am hopeful yet, maybe not this month, but next. I anticipate that that date will be in the spring, maybe in February or March. But we'll make a big deal about it. So, okay, good. Good. Look, one ticket sold. All right. All right. I'm grateful for your time. Thanks very much.
Stay up for just a minute.
What did I do?
No, you're fine. No, in recognition of your presentation, the Rotary Club of Muscatine will donate funds to pay for 20 children to be inoculated from the polio virus. So I have a bookmark and a koozie, and I have one for you and one for Kayla, since she was chiming in and giving so much crucial information for you guys to take back and enjoy in your office. So thank you for the presentation today. So thank you to Rob and Kayla for coming out. They did put the brochures on your table. Take them, take one back to your office and put it out in a staff room, or share it with someone that might enjoy the season and help Rob out a little bit for making the drive today. Help him keep his job, because I think he's doing a pretty good job. So with that, I think our presentation next week, if I'm not mistaken, is Mr. Clint Christopher, our very own, to give us a preview of the school year ahead of us, which starts on Wednesday. So if you're not ready, sir, buckle up. So we'll see how their first few days go dealing with the heat, and then what is on the docket for the year to come. And if there's nothing else, I will have everybody stand for the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, believe, the truth, it affairs all concerned. I did forget to announce that our board will be meeting after, so if you guys could just hang out.